What happens when a carefully controlled public image collides with a host who refuses to play along? The studio lights of Live with Kelly and Mark shimmered across polished floors, reflecting the usual warmth that millions of viewers had come to expect every morning. The band played, the audience clapped in rhythm, and Kelly Ripa stepped onto the stage with her signature energy, all effortless charm and practiced ease. Beside her, Mark smiled, relaxed, familiar. It was the kind of opening that felt almost ritualistic, predictable, safe. Until it wasn't. "All right, everyone," Kelly beamed, glancing briefly toward the camera before turning back to the audience. "Our next guest is someone the entire world has been talking about." A ripple of anticipation moved through the room. She's a global figure, a philanthropist, and someone whose story continues to spark conversation everywhere. Please welcome Meghan Markle. The applause hit fast and loud as Meghan stepped out from backstage. She moved with precision. Not rushed, not casual, but measured. Every step deliberate. She wore a cream-toned designer outfit that caught the light just enough to demand attention without asking for it. Her smile was perfectly formed, practiced to the point where it looked less like emotion and more like a performance. Kelly leaned in for a welcoming hug. "Meghan, we're so happy to have you here." "Thank you," Meghan replied smoothly, but something in her tone lingered just beneath the surface. Flat, controlled, almost distant. They took their seats. The audience settled. Cameras tightened their focus. And somewhere behind the scenes, a producer leaned slightly closer to their monitor, because something already felt off. "So," Kelly began, crossing her legs and leaning forward with genuine curiosity, "you've had such a busy year. New projects, new initiatives, life in California. How are you managing everything?" Meghan tilted her head slightly, her expression calm but distant. "Well, Kelly," she said, her voice measured, "balance is really about clarity. When you understand what truly matters, everything else becomes noise." A pause. "I've always been very clear about my priorities." The sentence landed cleanly, but the implication lingered. Kelly smiled, though her eyes flickered for the briefest moment. "That's interesting," she said lightly. "I think a lot of people watching, especially working moms, struggle with that kind of clarity. Do you have any advice for them?" Meghan let out a soft, almost dismissive laugh. "Advice?" she repeated. "I think everyone's situation is different. What works at a certain level of life doesn't always translate elsewhere." There it was, subtle but sharp. The audience shifted slightly in their seats. Mark leaned in quickly, sensing the air tighten. "Speaking of your work," he added, "your foundation has been doing a lot lately. Can you tell us about that?" Meghan nodded, her posture straightening just a touch. "The foundation is focused on real impact," she said. "Mental health, women's empowerment, global issues that require long-term solutions, not surface-level conversations." Kelly nodded politely. "That's great. Is there a specific project you're most proud of?" For the first time, Meghan's expression tightened. "I'm proud of all of it," she replied. "I don't think it's productive to single out one initiative over another." The tone had changed, slightly colder now. Kelly kept her smile, but her voice softened just a fraction. "Of course, I just thought it might help viewers connect with something concrete, something they can really understand." "Our viewers," Meghan echoed, placing subtle emphasis on the word. Then a small pause. "If people want specifics," she continued, "they can visit the website. I'm not here to promote." The temperature in the room dropped, not dramatically, but enough. Kelly blinked once, recalibrating. "No, of course not," she said smoothly. "We just want to give you a space to share your work." "I have many spaces," Meghan replied calmly. "Netflix, podcasts, partnerships. This is just another appearance." Another appearance? The phrase landed heavier than it should have. Kelly glanced briefly at Mark, a silent exchange. They both felt it now. This wasn't a conversation, it was a performance, and they weren't directing it. All right, Kelly said, shifting gears with a practiced ease that came from decades on live television. Let's lighten things up a bit. The audience perked slightly, grateful for the pivot. You've been spotted at some incredible restaurants recently, Kelly continued. Are you a foodie? Any favorites you'd recommend? It should have been an easy moment, a soft reset. Instead, Meghan's expression hardened. I don't really approach food that way, she said slowly. I focus on sustainability, ethics, nutrition. Recommending restaurants feels trivial. The word hung there. Trivial. A few audience members exchanged glances. Kelly's smile tightened, just slightly. I think people enjoy discovering new places, she replied gently. It's one of those simple pleasures. Simple, Meghan repeated. Then a pause. For some people, that's enough. The shift was unmistakable now. This wasn't subtle anymore. This was deliberate. Kelly inhaled slowly, keeping her composure intact. Well, she said, her tone still warm but more measured now, I think everyone deserves simple moments. Life can get pretty overwhelming. Overwhelming is often a choice, Meghan replied immediately. The room went still. People who feel overwhelmed, she continued, usually haven't prioritized correctly. A silence spread across the set, not loud, but heavy. Kelly's expression didn't break, but something behind her eyes changed, just slightly. Because for the first time since the interview began, she stopped adjusting and started listening differently, carefully, closely, because this wasn't just tension anymore. This was a line being drawn, and neither of them had stepped back yet. The cameras kept rolling. The audience held its breath, and somewhere in that quiet, fragile space between politeness and confrontation, something irreversible had already begun. The silence didn't break all at once. It stretched, thin, fragile, like glass under pressure. Kelly Ripa held her posture, her smile still in place, but no longer effortless. It was controlled now, intentional, the kind of smile built not from comfort, but from discipline. She had been here before, difficult guests, awkward moments, subtle tension. But this felt different. Interesting perspective, Kelly said carefully, her voice calm but more deliberate now. Though I think a lot of people, single parents, caregivers, people juggling multiple jobs, might feel that their stress isn't exactly a choice. A soft murmur rippled through the audience. Meghan Markle didn't smile. Instead, she leaned back slightly, folding one arm over the other. I wasn't referring to extreme cases, she replied, her tone sharper now. Context matters, obviously. Obviously. The word carried weight. Kelly nodded once. Of course, she said. I just want to make sure our viewers feel seen. Our viewers, Meghan repeated again, that same subtle emphasis returning. Then, they'll interpret things however they want, she added coolly. That's what people do. They hear what fits their narrative. The energy shifted again. Not loud, not explosive, but unmistakable. Kelly exhaled slowly, then leaned slightly forward, her tone still calm, but now anchored. Let's talk about your time in the UK, she said, pivoting again. You spent several years there. Is there anything you miss? A simple question, safe, neutral. But Meghan's reaction was immediate. Miss, she echoed. A faint humorless smile appeared. I don't really believe in nostalgia, she continued. It keeps people stuck. A pause. I prefer growth. The audience shifted again. This wasn't how these conversations usually went. Kelly tried once more. Sure, she said gently, but sometimes memories, people, places, they stay with you. That's human. Meghan's gaze sharpened slightly. I made very few meaningful connections there, she replied flatly. It wasn't an environment that encouraged authenticity. There was something colder in her voice now, more direct. Everything was structured, hierarchical, performative, she continued, not exactly conducive to real relationships. Kelly tilted her head. I think a lot of Americans understand that things aren't as glamorous as they seem, she said. Meghan looked at her, really looked this time. And there it was again, that edge. Do they? Megyn asked quietly. The question wasn't curious, it was challenging. Because from what I've seen, she continued, American media tends to simplify things, turn people into characters, narratives. It's easier that way. A subtle tension passed through the room. Kelly's smile faded, just slightly. I think that's a bit unfair, she replied, her voice still composed but firmer now. There's been a lot of thoughtful coverage, especially regarding your experience. Megyn's expression darkened. My experience? She repeated. The temperature dropped again. You mean the racism, the institutional pressure, the constant media scrutiny? She continued, her voice tightening. Kelly didn't flinch. Yes, she said calmly, and many people sympathized with that. Sympathy isn't understanding, Megyn replied immediately, her tone sharpened further, and understanding isn't change. A pause. Nothing has changed. Mark shifted in his seat, sensing the escalation. But you've built a new life here, he offered. That's a big shift. Megyn turned toward him, slowly. With respect, she said, that's personal change. I'm talking about systemic issues. The word systemic landed hard. Kelly nodded. And your foundation is working toward that? I work toward that in everything I do, Megyn replied. Everything. The statement hung in the air with quiet intensity. Kelly studied her for a moment. Then, and appearing here, she said carefully, is part of that? It was subtle, but it was the first real pushback. The audience felt it instantly. A shift, a spark. Megyn leaned forward slightly. Excuse me, she said, her voice dropping. Kelly didn't retreat. I'm just asking, she clarified calmly. You've talked about meaningful impact. I'm wondering how this platform fits into that. The room went still, completely still. For a fraction of a second, Megyn didn't respond. Then, so now we're questioning the value of this appearance? She asked. Her tone wasn't defensive. It was cold, calculated. That's not what I said, Kelly replied evenly. But it's what you implied, Megyn shot back. The air tightened instantly. Mark glanced between them. The audience held its breath. No, Kelly said, her voice steady. I asked a question. And I'm answering, Megyn replied, leaning in just a little more. I'm here because my team thought it would be beneficial. That doesn't mean I need validation from it. Validation, the word echoed. Kelly nodded once, slowly. All right, she said. But something had shifted, deeply, because now this wasn't just tension anymore. This was friction, and it was building, visible, unavoidable. Megyn leaned back again, folding her arms, her posture closed, guarded, almost defensive. Kelly noticed. Of course she did. She'd spent decades reading people in real time. And now, she wasn't just hosting anymore. She was analyzing, adapting, waiting. Because something about this interaction wasn't adding up. Every question deflected, every tone sharpened, every response distancing. And then, Kelly made a choice, a small one, but one that would change everything. Let me ask you something more direct, she said. The audience leaned in. Mark straightened slightly. Even the cameras felt closer. Kelly's tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. Do you feel like you're being misunderstood? She asked. Simple, clear, but loaded. Megyn paused. For the first time, she didn't answer immediately. Her eyes flickered, just briefly. Then, I feel like people hear what they want to hear, she said, careful, measured. And when they don't? Kelly asked. A beat. They create their own version, Megyn replied. Another pause. Kelly nodded slowly. Then, what if, she said quietly, some of that reaction comes from how things are being said? Silence. Real silence this time. Not just tension. Impact. Megyn's expression shifted, subtly but unmistakably. Her jaw tightened, her posture stiffened, and for the first time since she walked on stage, she looked challenged. Not by the situation, but by the person sitting across from her. Kelly didn't move, didn't soften, didn't redirect. because now she wasn't steering the conversation away from conflict, she was stepping into it, and everyone in that studio felt it. Something had crossed a line, quietly, but permanently, and there was no going back now. The silence didn't just linger this time, it settled, heavy, unavoidable, final. For a brief moment, Meghan Markle looked like she might respond, like she might reclaim control of the narrative she had walked in with. But the words didn't come, and that said everything. Across from her, Kelly Ripa remained still, composed, grounded in a way that didn't demand attention, but held it completely. Because now the dynamic had shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, but undeniably. "You want engagement," Meghan finally said, her voice quieter now, but tighter. "But engagement isn't interrogation." Kelly didn't react immediately. She let the words pass through the space between them. Then, "Neither is it deflection," she replied, soft but precise. The audience felt it. A ripple of tension moved through the room, subtle but real. Meghan exhaled sharply, her composure thinning at the edges now. "I came here," she said, her tone rising just slightly, "to have a meaningful conversation, not to be analyzed." Kelly's expression didn't change. "This is a conversation," she said calmly, "but conversations require participation, not control." That word again, control. And this time, it hit harder, because Meghan felt it. Her posture shifted abruptly as she stood up from her chair, the sudden movement slicing through the tension like glass breaking. "I'm not going to sit here and be spoken to like this," she said, her voice firm now, echoing slightly in the stunned studio. Gasps, not loud, but enough. Kelly stood too, not aggressively, not reactively, just evenly. "You haven't been disrespected," she said, her voice steady. "You've been asked questions." Meghan grabbed her bag from beside her chair, movements sharper now, less controlled. "No," she shot back. "I've been challenged." Kelly held her gaze. "Yes," she said. A beat. "Because that's part of a real conversation." The room froze again. Mark stayed seated, watching carefully, knowing there was no stepping into this now. This wasn't something that could be softened or redirected. It had gone too far. "You know what," Meghan said, shaking her head slightly. "This is exactly what I expected." Her tone carried frustration now, and something else, defensiveness. "A platform that pretends to be welcoming," she continued, "but turns the moment something isn't packaged the way you want." Kelly didn't interrupt, didn't react emotionally. She just answered. "We gave you space," she said. "We gave you time, and every question was met with resistance." Meghan's eyes flashed. "Because the questions lacked substance." "Or because the answers weren't coming," Kelly replied. That was it, the line, the one that couldn't be walked back. The audience went completely silent. No shifting, no whispers. Nothing. Meghan stared at her. For a second, just a second, it looked like something might break through. Not anger, not control, something closer to exposure. But it vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by a colder, sharper resolve. "I'm done," she said flatly, and with that, she turned. Her heels struck the floor with sharp, echoing clicks as she walked off the set. No wave, no glance back, just distance. The studio remained frozen in the aftermath. The cameras stayed locked, the moment stretched, and for the first time in the show's long history, there was nothing to fill it. Mark blinked, exhaling slowly. "Did that just happen?" he muttered under his breath. Kelly didn't answer right away. She watched the empty space where Meghan had been standing. Then slowly, she sat back down. "Yes," she said quietly. A producer's voice crackled faintly through the earpiece. "Cut to commercial." The screen faded, but the tension didn't. When the show returned, the energy had shifted completely. Still controlled, still professional, but different. Kelly faced the camera directly this time. No performance, no forced brightness, just honesty. Well, she began, offering a small, composed smile, that was unexpected. A soft, nervous laugh moved through the audience. I want to say this, she continued, her voice steady. We always aim to create a space where guests feel comfortable, respected. A pause. But respect also means being able to ask questions and expecting real answers. The audience listened closely now, because this wasn't just recovery, this was reflection. We don't script conversations here, she added. We don't control outcomes. Another beat. And sometimes that leads to moments like this. Mark nodded beside her. But we move forward, he said gently. That's live television. Kelly glanced at him briefly, then back to the camera. And that's honesty, she finished. A quiet applause followed. Not loud, but sincere, because everyone in that room knew they hadn't just watched an interview, they had witnessed a shift. A moment where control slipped, where expectations collapsed, where performance met reality and couldn't hold. And somewhere, beyond the lights and cameras, millions of viewers sat in silence, replaying it, reanalyzing it, asking the same question. Who really lost control? And who finally stopped playing along?